the room erupted into chaos. 600 commissioners to the 2006 General Council of the United Church were leaderless, and those people did not know what to do next. Where the moderator wanted to take a 10-minute break to consult over what was happening, the room was flying with accusations and apologies, people on their knees, people on their feet. It was pandemonium, and we didn't know what to do. We were discussing the emerging Spirit program of the United Church of Canada. It was from 2006 to 2009, a 3-year, $10 million communications strategy of the United Church of Canada, designed to eliminate what was happening. The church was inviting itself. It launched the wondercafe.ca, a place where people could go online and have conversations about hard things and be present to one another. That was the project we were debating. What was anticipated was that we would have a greater understanding. The United Church would find its public voice again, and we would break down barriers. In promoting why this would be a good decision, and talking about the differences that this project would make in the life of the church and in Canada, one of the key leaders of the project used a very derogatory term for Indigenous people. It wasn't long before the Indigenous leaders, all collected, the delegation, got to the microphone, and they shamed that leader publicly. You see, that's what happens in Indigenous communities. When someone does something like that, there's a public shaming, and then in the doing, that person is restored to community. It happens within the community. That's an Indigenous understanding. Well, the then president of BC Conference was furious because he held up Matthew 18, the text that Myrna just read, and said, what happened here? He left the room and went to pray in the chapel. And what this project hoped to do didn't happen at all. In fact, we were more silent and more different than we were. Nothing in that moment was accomplished. In the end, the project passed. We went through that project. In fact, wondercafe2.ca is currently running. It's still a site. Go chat. But what we had anticipated would happen to bring us together, we were further apart. That happens, doesn't it, sometimes? When we're in conflict with somebody, we heat up the rhetoric. We get angry. Our capacity to see perspectives atrophies. We get to the point of pushing them away. A long-lost cousin found me on Facebook, somewhere in the middle US. And so she friended me. We became friends back and forth until the debate of gun control. And she was promoting gun use, was angry at these gun control fanatics. No one's going to take my gun away. I would throw up when I I would feel like I would want to barf when she would put that stuff online. In the end, what did I do? I unfriended her. And what happened? The relationship is gone. There's no understanding. We see this happen all the time, particularly in social media, from the President of the United States on down to the teenage bullies. We vilify. We don't look at the issue, we look at the person. We vilify the person, we separate them, and we surround ourselves with the people who agree with us, to the point where we're siloed, right? We don't want a voice that would be contrary. It's too inconvenient. And our tongues become weapons. That was happening at the time of Solomon as well, King David's son. He was on the throne, and he was noticing also that the war of words was not helpful. Remember the words that Myrna read? He wrote, a brother wronged is more unyielding than a fortified city. Someone's annoyed, they're angry with you, and there's no getting in. Disputes are like barred gates of a citadel. The tongue, he writes, has the power of life and death. And those who love it will eat its fruit. Solomon noticed it too. Now, Jesus tries to get at conflict resolution in Matthew 18, right? He tries to get at it. But it seems a little one-sided. You think somebody has wronged you. And so you go to them and say, you wronged me. And if they don't agree with you, well, you bring two others. And they say, you wronged that person. And then if they still don't agree, well, you bring the whole community and gang up on them and said, you're wrong. But the folks at Waves yesterday weren't real impressed with Jesus in this moment. Certainly, conflict resolution is a little more nuanced than that, they argued. Do we get to argue with Jesus? They asked. It is a little more nuanced. And we have to remember that this conflict resolution prospect happened when the disciples were arguing about who was going to be greater. Who was going to be greater in the kingdom of heaven? Remember, that's how this whole kind of discourse starts, with a fight between the disciples. Oh, that sounds familiar, right? And then Jesus says, unless you change and become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven, he says. And then they get into this conversation about conflict. So, how do children approach conflict? A little conversation. How do children approach conflict? I remember when my oldest son, Jordan, was 12, 13 maybe? No, younger. 8, 10, something like that. Doesn't matter. He was in about grade 4. So you know where he is, 9, 8, 9, 10, whatever. He's in grade 4, and there's 3 kids, 3 boys in the French immersion program. Jordan's the third one out. You get the picture. And Jordan is picked on by one guy in particular. And Jordan says, he finally comes to me and says, Eric is picking on me. I said, have you talked to him? Yes, I asked him to stop. I said, would you like to do? I just want him to stop. How do we get him to stop? Go to a grown-up. So I said, would you like me to go and we can go and talk to his family or to Eric and his dad? Or he said, could we do that? So we go off and we have this little confrontation. I can remember Jordan, little guy, sitting on this massive couch, huge couch. I kind of think I was beside him, but he looked so big or small in relationship to the size of the couch, which is how it felt. This huge conflict for him and this little guy. And you know, Eric wouldn't come upstairs to hear it. Only he sat with Eric's mom. And Jordan didn't want an apology. I just want him to stop. Conflict through the lens of children. I just want it to stop. Get this right, says Jesus. Because what you bind up and hold onto on earth will be bound up in heaven. And what you loosen and let go of on earth will be loosened and let go of in heaven, he says. Get this right. I think of the chaos in Thunder Bay at that General Council meeting. I think of the silos that we create when we're angry and we want to push away the people we don't want to hear. I think of children and just saying, please stop. Is it that simple? And I'm reminded of my conversation this summer with Beverly Brown. Bev Brown and her dear friend Joanna Haney led participants in the Indigenous Studies program through the Kairos blanket exercise at VST this summer. I was blown away by that experience. I learned a whole lot that I had not learned before, and I understand why the John A. Macdonald controversy is a controversy. After the event, I went to Bev and I talked about this congregation's activities in response to reconciliation. I said, we're doing this movie night, we're doing a study on the Inconvenient Indian, or this movie series, Inconvenient Indian. We are hoping to have the Kairos blanket exercise, and then we know that we want to do more. We want to build relationship. I looked at her and I said, how do we build relationship? She looked at me, she said, it's not that difficult, you know. Invite us in. Invite us in. It's as simple as that. Unless you become like a child, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Conflict frightens us, doesn't it? The more challenging and more complex the issue, the greater potential for differing perspectives, for different assumptions, different outcomes. It's easy to walk away. It's easy to turn a blind eye and pretend it doesn't happen. It's easy to simply gather those folks who agree with us and silo ourselves. It's easy, except when the stakes get higher. When you're more invested in the outcome. And eventually, we become invested. How many watched John McCain's funeral yesterday? I want to talk about reconciliation. Two former presidents couldn't be more opposite from each other, each exhibiting statesmanship like we haven't seen. John McCain wrote these words as he prepared for his death. We weaken our greatness when we confuse our patriotism with tribal rivalries that have sown resentment and hatred and violence in all corners of the globe. We weaken it when we hide behind walls rather than tear them down, when we doubt the power of our ideals rather than trust them to be a great force for change that they've always been. When our capacity for holding differing perspectives atrophies, Jesus is present and says, whatever the two of you ask for, the Father in heaven will grant it for you. Who knew that the phrase, where two or more of you are gathered, I'm with you, had to do with conflict and how we are with one another in conflict? Who knew? It's as simple as this. I want to get it right. It's as simple as this. When we're mired in conflict, invite me. Remember Bev? Invite me. Check perceptions. The questions, did you say that? I don't know, what did you hear? That's a perception check question. Check perceptions. Ask for what you need. Listen for what the other needs. Focus on the issue, not the person. ask God for help. Because where two or more of you are gathered, says Christ, I'm with you. With Christ, conflict is that simple.
Trust